Hey, real quick before we start the podcast, if you have listened to more than one episode, can you do me a favor and rate and review the show? Now, I'm not big on asking for favors, but we really want to get this podcast listed in the top of all health and fitness podcasts, not just the fitness category. This will take you less than a minute, and if you could do that, that would make us friends forever. And since we refuse all sponsors on the show, this will be my only ask rather than telling you to go check out some supplement or product we don't actually believe in, like every other podcast out there. So please rate and review. Okay, that's it. To the podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jared Moon here with Joe Courtney. What's up, Joe?
How's it going, man? How always changing things up here.
Yeah, just we're on the continuous pursuit of improvement, and we always will be in all areas. Today, podcast-wise, we are looking at a study on beta-alanine. We don't talk a lot about supplementation, but we will be today, and means I'll be talking about some of the most proven supplements out there, and then whether or not you should even be considering something like beta-alanine, see if it's worth your time. I know it has kind of gained popularity. I feel like it used to be more of like a niche supplement several years ago, but I feel like it is either getting thrown into a lot more supplements, or people taking it standalone than I had ever seen previously. So we'll talk about that, some of the science behind it, kind of give you the coach's take on what we feel, what we feel you should do with this kind of supplement, if it has a place or doesn't have a place. Then after that, we'll get into the topic today. And the topic is, where's the line between variation and random? Like, how do we decide what programs are a little bit more random? What are the consequences of such? And how do you juggle variation with the ability to still see results, not just saying it's varied and that's a benefit to the program when actually it's a detriment because the variation is too frequent. So we'll get into all the details there, and then we have a nice Meet Yourself Saturday workout at the end. But let's get to some updates. Joe, how's life, man?
Well, slowly progressing. So if you're listening to the last week or so, then we are on back watch for me, slowly getting better so that I can. Yeah, it's kind of like Baywatch, not to be confused with Baywatch, but it's
I was actually
just
confused for a second. I was like, what is backwatch? I
just
was like,
just
oh
as,
yeah.
yeah, just as sensual, just the backside of it. Backwatch. So it's getting better. I did a couple lower body days. I was actually able to get my legs somewhat sore and do like an actual somewhat of a lower body weight workout, just wearing a vest. And then I did a 30-minute bike, and that felt good. My back hasn't really hurt nearly as much. Bending over to pick things up like the kid or whatnot has been getting better. We just went away for the weekend, so like sleeping in a new bed, obviously that just kind of, I wouldn't say it set it back, but I could tell that there was a difference just because it's not as good of a mattress and as good of a setup, whatnot. But I'm determined to go for a run this week. I just really want to, and I don't think it's going to be that much of a of a hindrance. And one thing that I've noticed, like going through PT, and the fact that like if you didn't listen last week, then my ankle, one of the issues with my back is that my ankle is rotating outward. My right ankle is rotating out instead of in. So being conscious of keeping that inside of my foot grounded in my big toe, not even just only with doing like workouts like squats and stuff, but walking. Like we'll go on 2 to 3 mile walks every day, especially like to get Landon to do a good nap because it's a surefire way to get him to sleep. But just walking, I very consciously walking on the inside of my foot, making sure it stays down. And I notice like the outside of my hip, like the piriformis area, can feel the difference. And just doing walking, whether it's I'll relax and just normal walk, or I will consciously have it on the inside of my foot. So just that little bit and going through all of my PT stuff definitely make a difference. So when I go to do my run, I'm going to do that as well. I think that's one of the reasons why a couple weeks ago when I went for a run, my groin or my hip flexor on that side was really, really hurting. I think I was just turning outward because I hadn't seen a PT yet. So this week I'll go for a run. I'll make that adjustment and just be, it'll just be a zone 2. So we're a casual run and just being much more conscious of how my foot strike is. And that's just that little bit of a thing, not really worrying about speed or anything, just worrying about my foot strike and getting back into that routine just to get some good form.
That one's hard because that's such a repetitive movement that that gets heavily ingrained to like subconscious, like
Yeah.
involuntary actions from the brain. So to make that a voluntary corrective action is very difficult with things that aren't as natural. Let's just say like a heavy back squat. That's not something you're doing 5,000 times a day, whether you want to or not. But like how your foot hits the ground is something you're going to be doing thousands of times every day, and you have been doing for the last, couple of decades. So that's a hard one to change. No easy task.
Yeah, it's like every 5 minutes on my run, I'm gonna have to like really like, oh wait, I need to look down, pay attention, see how my foot's striking, make sure it's all good. Yeah.
I barefoot shoes did that for me, like the straight up like Vibram toe
Hmm.
shoes or whatever. I don't know. I'm not like recommending those officially, but when I did use those, I use them very intentionally. A lot of people use them very idiotically, and they go on like a 7 mile run the first day
Yeah.
they get them. I
Yeah.
I
Oh, my
would like
calves hurt so much afterwards.
yeah, I would
Oh.
go on like 800 meters, maybe a mile. A lot of it would be in the grass, like that kind of stuff, like working up to it. But it really forced me. If I started to get tired and lazy, you instantly know when you start to do heel striking. So instead of like that midfoot to forefoot pressure. So I mean that's a good
Yeah.
way to try it out.
Honestly, what was it like 3 years ago when it was 2 years ago, in 2020 when I was living in Baltimore and it was I was on Endure running a lot, and the more I was running, I don't know what it was, but my Achilles started to flare up. I have tendonitis in my Achilles, and then after a few months of that, it was just like my Achilles was just I was trying to smash him, it wasn't getting better, so I went and did just a couple of weeks, like 2 times a week. I went to the track, went to the turf, and did barefoot like drills just barefoot on the turf, backwards running. I remember you said for shin splints you did that
Mhm.
for a while. I don't have shin splints, but still Achilles. I was do like sideways stuff, backwards running, forwards, just a little bit, not even full effort, just making sure I was just going through those motions. And after a couple weeks, my Achilles was just better. It was just a lot better from that, and then smashing just a little bit of a rehab, which is good to work in. So I think it's just some one of those things that I have to keep up with. And I always know my ankles are a bit not that stable, and I have a balancing pad. I just haven't really used it very much either.
You need some slackline in your life too.
Oh man, I'm so terrible at that.
Well, it's
I
all the more
don't have any.
reason to
I don't
do
have any
it.
trees.
Yeah,
My
it's
yard
a
literally has
hard
no
thing
trees.
to like set up. I'm not gonna lie, if you don't have the right setup. Cool, man. Anything else?
No.
Well, I don't have a lot update wise. It's hot
Hot.
again.
I
Yeah,
I was looking at the weather over the weekend. I was just like, because I always have it on my weather app, and I was just like, oh, what's Dallas like? Oh, it's on fire right now.
yeah. I think tomorrow is 111, 112. So that's good. I actually messaged my brother this morning, and I was like, "Hey, bro, like, I don't. I'm all for being tough, but not stupid. I don't think that you should come train with me in the afternoons." I was like, either I'm not saying I'm not going to, but he shouldn't, because like I do a lot of like sauna stuff. I've been working out in the garage for over a decade, extreme temperatures. I was like, we either start working out in the morning, or you're gonna have to start doing stuff at home by yourself. And he was in complete agreement and kind of like, oh, thank God, I'm not coming over when it's like 109 today, late in the afternoon. So yeah, I'm adjusting my workout time back to the morning to be able to try and hit some cooler temperatures. And when I say cooler, it's going to be like 90 at like 6 or 7 a.m., maybe 85 if I'm lucky. So yeah, that's one update, adjusting back to morning, which I am actually really happy about. Like I really wanted to start training in the morning again. I was only training in the afternoons really for him, um, where he would stay consistent and be able to attend. So hopefully he can do this. He's not really a morning person, so we'll see how it goes. Other than that, all I have are questions, like things that I've thought about over the past week. And two things I've thought about. Well, one, you kind of hit on it. You were like, you were somewhere else this weekend. Sleep wasn't as good. Your back started hurting or whatever. And we're so optimized and dialed in when we're at home, like sleeping wise and like all this stuff. This is a question I've had with a lot of friends and people who are similar. We, got the chili pad, and like, you know, you take the melatonin supplement and you take the magnesium 2 hours before bed, and you got the blue light blockers and like all this crap, right? That we can do to try to optimize our sleep, and the perfect mattress and all this crap, right? Um, but does optimization decrease resilience? It's a big question I'm wondering, because I just took I mentioned that I got a new pillow that like fixed my shoulders, right? And we're talking about, I'm still super just impressed by this. Like, not the pillow itself, just the fact that it's actually worked. I got a new pillow. I have no shoulder pain. I've had shoulder pain for years, or at least shoulder annoyances. And it's gone now. And I didn't get to use that pillow for 2 weeks. So I didn't take it with me. And my shoulder pain came back because I was sleeping like all these weird different positions. But I also kind of hate that. I don't like this, like, I don't like to be coddled or to think that I need to be coddled. Now, I obviously can tough it out and it's whatever, but should we live these optimized lives at the potential decrease in resilience? I don't know if it actually does that. I didn't feel less optimal for 2 weeks necessarily, but some things started to creep back up to where if it was a long enough timeline, maybe I would be feeling a lot worse. So that's a question I have for just food for thought. Everybody think about it. And then I was thinking more about this 300 challenge. If I had to change it, anything, because I've been doing it, I haven't missed anything, I would change it. The strictest rule I applied was, if you're doing the 300, it has to be a 300 calorie training session, right? Like if you're doing the most strict level 3.
Mm-hmm.
But then if I want to do a second training session, it won't count unless that session is also 300. Like that was the rule I set. That was over the top. I think that was too much. And the reason I say that is because I think that the rule should be, you change one training session in the day has to be 300 calories. Any other training session can allot towards the time, but not like anything else. You can't like add up sparse out calories during the day. But the reason I'm thinking that is because more realistically, that's how life would work, right? Like that's how you could still benefit as opposed to it being less gamified. I'm not going to make the change because I feel like I'd be making the change for like a personal like inconvenience. But if I calculated everything that I actually do towards my total weekly minutes, I'd probably be at over 500 minutes per week. I'm normally like just passing 300, like 300, maybe 400 if it was a busy week. But I think if I counted like mobility time and like all these other things that I might do, or like a random mile run that wouldn't count for anything because it was only 180 calories, like things like that. This is one change that I would make. And I think if I do it in subsequent years, that is the change I would add. So not really a lot of updates, but questions.
I think
and feedback.
I could totally talk about the comfort toward resilience, but we might just table that for next week's topic or something.
Yeah, it does make a good topic. I've had a conversation with a lot of friends about it, and it's just something to think about. Can you go over the top? Is there too much? Maybe we'll talk about that next week. But
so if you do have thoughts, either put them in comments on YouTube, hit us up on Facebook, kind of Facebook group, but put them in YouTube because we'll check those and then we can kind of bring them up. We can put them on and talk about it.
Yeah, because there's the other school of thought would be like optimize nothing, but then it's like, well, I don't want to like live a worse version of my life to claim I'm more resilient. That's not.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll get into it.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get into the study. So let's talk about beta alanine. So the study this week, does beta alanine supplementation enhance adaptations to resistance training? A randomized, placebo-controlled, double-blind study. All the things that you want to hear when you're doing supplementation. So we have randomized, it's placebo-controlled, and double-blind. So the purpose of the study was to assess the chronic effects of beta-alanine supplementation on strength and hypertrophy outcomes in resistance-trained men. The people had total of 19 healthy male participants. While the average resistance training was nearly 6 years, all participants were required to have at least 1 full year of resistance training experience in order to participate. In addition, participants needed to squat at least 125% of their body weight and bench press at least 100% of their body weight and abstain from dietary supplements at least 6 months prior to the onset of the study, which I'm surprised you could find. Those are fairly trained individuals who said that they won't touch supplements before, or hadn't touched supplements for a long time. So very interesting. But let's talk about beta alanine real quick. So I pulled this from somewhere, and no, I'm kidding. It was like WebMD because I wanted to try and get a more like what what are we doing with beta alanine? Like we should kind of talk about like what it does. And here's the I don't know if we should call it a theory or the idea behind beta alanine supplementation. So muscles contain carnosine. Higher levels of carnosine may allow the muscles to perform for longer periods before they become fatigued. Carnosine does this by helping to regulate acid buildup in the muscles, a primary cause of muscle fatigue. Beta alanine is one of carnosine's main ingredients. Beta alanine supplements are thought to boost the production of carnosine and in turn boost sports performance. However, well, I'm not going to get into their take of what their kind of takeaway, whether or not it works, but I already don't like beta alanine for the reason I just told you. Is like it's a double leap. You know, they're not saying beta alanine it helps reduce acid buildup in the muscles. It's carnosine that does that, and a main ingredient or precursor for carnosine is beta alanine, and so that's like a double leap for me. Anytime you hear double leap in supplements, in my opinion, I guess everything would technically do that if you went down to the cellular level, but it just makes me think already like bodies don't really work that way that well.
It's like
So
a
it's
if this then that.
yeah, and it's like twice. And so it's like if this then that, and then if this then that, because both of those things have to work properly. Because what if something happens in like a degradation of carnosine that we don't know about, to where beta alanine may have increased it, but to a lesser quality? You know, these are just ideas I could ask off the top of my head without even being a scientist. But the real thing that, you know, garage gym athletes are looking for is it something they should take. So the real reason they were doing it, they hypothesized the supplementation protocol adopted would maximize both strength and morphological adaptations. So you get bigger and you get stronger by taking it. I could get into a lot more. They took it a bunch. So they, let's see, randomized, placebo-controlled, double-blind. So participants were instructed to wait 3 to 4 hours between doses. They took it, wasn't it 4 times per day? And then if they skipped a dose, they were supposed to double a dose. And then over the
Yeah, like
8-week
loading.
study, they had 385.4 grams over the course of the 8 weeks. And they did that throughout the entire 8 weeks. So on Mondays and Thursdays, they completed exercise targeting the pecs, deltoids, and triceps. Tuesdays and Fridays, they completed exercises targeting the quads, lats, and biceps. So anyway, that's it. They basically did strength / hypertrophy program. They took this stuff 6.4 grams a day split into 4 equal sized doses. Yeah, so they took it 4 times a day for a total of 6.4 grams per day for 8 weeks. And ultimately didn't work that well, right? Like that was the main conclusion. If I read the conclusion directly from the published study, it says, in conclusion, the 8-week training period induced significant strength and morphological responses. However, the addition of beta alanine supplementation did not enhance these adaptive outcomes. And the counter argument, so it didn't work for strength and hypertrophy, but the counter argument would be you're testing beta alanine on the wrong type of activity, because I don't actually hear it used for a lot of strength and hypertrophy stuff. It's a lot more endurance and high intensity stuff. So anyway, what are your thoughts, Joe, when we unpack this or anything in general on beta alanine?
Yeah, it was definitely a really good study execution wise, which uh, leads to help support that it doesn't really do much for traditional lifters and bodybuilding type such. And the fact that it was the criteria for the lifters and what they had to meet, this would have been a completely different, probably would have been a completely different outcome if they had non-trained athletes. And just like
Yeah.
this is one of those, it's important to have the right kind of group, because even just the people, like same exact study, different kind of people, different outcome in general. Yeah, I would be interested to see the hit or the endurance side of it, maybe even strength endurance, something a little bit more intense. If you need to recover a lot, or even how I wonder how it would work with intra sessions, or like during events, if it would do much. But as far as training wise, like it might only give you a couple of extra percentage points if you could do anything. And I think if it the point is to delay an acid buildup. And I think to me, the body is smart enough that it's building up an acid for a reason. And it just reminds me of the study last year we did on, what was it? Uh, Allergy meds, how
Hmm.
it blocks certain inflammatory markers. And while you want to reduce inflammation, it's also stunting your ability to grow and gain. And so that's what made me think of this, is that, like, okay, if you're stunting a natural response to resistance training or something, then maybe that's not the best. It could get you a little bit more in the short term, but you probably don't want to do it in the long term. So just another, so that's not a whole lot to take away from it, but it would just be interesting to see how on the endurance side of it, and then the intra event type usage.
Yeah, and I'll read some other stuff on shorter duration and endurance. So studies show that beta alanine helps increase your time to exhaustion. In other words, it helps you exercise for longer periods of time. A study in cyclists found that 4 weeks of supplements increased total work completed by 13%, increasing an additional 3.2% after 10 weeks. Also, 20 men on a comparable cycling test increased their time to exhaustion by 13 to 14% after 4 weeks of beta alanine supplementation. And then getting into short duration exercises, says in general, muscle acidosis limits the duration of high intensity exercise. For this reason, beta alanine specifically helps performance during high intensity and short duration exercise lasting 1 to several minutes. One study revealed that 6 weeks of taking beta alanine increased time to exhaustion by 19% during high intensity interval training. In another study, 18 rowers who supplemented for 7 weeks were 4.3 seconds faster than the placebo group in a 2,000 meter race lasting over 6 minutes. So it does seem, in small studies, let me just like preface that those were not gigantic studies, but it does seem in these smaller studies, short duration, high output glycolytic type things, and even some endurance training, there's a little bit of benefit. And if you're at the top professional level, maybe this, whatever 13 to 14% would be beneficial. But I would argue that you can get a lot of that same benefit through exercise itself, becoming fitter. If you have it goes back to kind of that zone 2. Like if you can stretch out your aerobic base, your body will inherently become better at this process. And so that's the best way to do it, not supplement something, and the only real people I could see benefiting from this, because anytime I even think about taking a supplement, I'm asking kind of 2 questions, like why and how long. So why am I taking it? Most of the time people are like, well, duh, increased performance. Like, okay, increased performance in my shorter duration or maybe my cycling bouts. For how long do I need to take it? And I'm not talking about for how long do I need to take it for it to work. How long do I plan to take it in my lifetime? If I can look at a supplement and be like, this might be something I want to take for the rest of my life, it becomes a little bit more like, okay, well, maybe I should. And if things that are like that is maybe if you're a vegan, vitamin B12, that might just be something you're like, that is something I will always supplement with because I don't get enough of it from other sources, unless you have a very like well-rounded vegan diet or something. I'm not a vegan. I'm just giving an example of something you might want to take for the rest of your life if you are. So anyway, those are the questions that you have to answer. And so, and will you even notice? So maybe if you had a competition coming up, maybe you signed up for some sort of CrossFit competition or cycling thing, maybe take this. But I would much rather be like, you know what? I'm going to add 3 hours of zone 2 to my training week to try and get my body to do this process better on its own and increase my fitness levels, as opposed to trying to take one amino acid that hopefully does all these things for me, when in reality it doesn't work. So great sources of beta alanine are meat, poultry, fish. So again, I don't even know how I got to talking about vegans today, but maybe beta alanine is great if you're vegan. But if you're not, like, maybe just eat the meat, because we run into this over and over again. I say we as an industry, is we'll look at something like there's like, let's say there's vitamin X in an apple, and then people will be like, oh shit, vitamin X does all this stuff and it's in apples. And then we'll be like, okay, take vitamin X out of apples, put it in a powder and give it to people. And then for some reason, it never translates the same. It's never the exact same. And it's probably either through intelligent design or evolution that apple has that thing in it, but it also probably needs all the other crap in the apple. It needs the fiber and the sugar and the other vitamins, and they all need to coincide, and they meet for this happy little party in your gut, and they're utilized properly. But when humans think they're smarter than either intelligent design or evolution, we're like, you know what, I'm just take this thing out, we're going to throw in people, and we're great. It never does. Never seems to hold up to that level of scrutiny. And so this is just kind of my thought process on supplementation. Like, if you want more beta alanine or even creatine, you know, great places to get that. Just meat. Go eat more meat. Go eat more meat, and see if you still think that you need to supplement after that fact. If you're okay eating meat, obviously. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on supplementation in general and beta alanine before you need to take it. It's great for high intensity stuff. Maybe some CrossFit stuff. I mean, could you see any other use of this? Like, would you use it?
Really the only thing I can think of is preloading before like an event, like to where I train for 1 hour a day, and an event I'm doing is probably going to take me 2+ hours. And if I don't have like either the time to, I mean, if I was doing an event, I'm always capable to do a 2 to 4 hour event. I mean, those freaking Spartans were 5 hours, both of them that we did, and I did fine. If I wanted to excel at the event, then I might maintain my training, maybe up my training a little bit, but I'm still probably only going to have that 1 hour training a day. And then, okay, maybe 6 weeks before, I'll load up on this to do a little bit better to excel at this event, and then drop off after that, because I still want to have the training be the focus, but this might help me a little bit in this big time event to where like I just can't add the hours for it. I'm not trying to win or anything. I'm just trying to do the best that I can.
Yeah, and then you have to like honestly ask yourself, like,
do I care that
what
much?
your expectations are? Because like, I could supplement with whatever the hell I want in a 100-mile bike race. I'm not getting on the podium, you know? So it's like, might as well just not take it, you know? Exactly. And so I think that's something to think about. Now, just going into supplements in general, if you're a big beta alanine fan, I mean, feel free to share your results or stories with us if you have any anecdotes with it. But I wouldn't classify it in the level of supplementation that we've kind of put other supplements, and that are just kind of proven a little more safe and effective. I give no supplement like the 100% seal of approval from Garage Gym Athlete, but creatine, caffeine are two of the most proven, and then protein as well. Almost not even really considered a supplement at times, because of depend on the source it's derived from. So those are not only more proven effective, but also they have really high like safety measures most of the time, you know, and I like to see a lot of research on a supplement before I really start ingesting it, to see what else could happen. And then another one that's kind of starting to get in the same realm of creatine, caffeine, like beetroot juice and tart cherry. Like I've seen a lot of research on it. We've done several podcasts on it. Great for endurance stuff and overall recovery. So another one to maybe look at. But those are really the only 3-4, if you're counting protein, that I would consider Garage Gym Athlete. Beta alanine would not make it onto my list of something I think that Garage Gym Athlete should try, or that I want to try, unless you're in these very specific situations.
Pretty much, yeah. I'd agree.
Cool. Hey, quick break here. As you know, we will not accept sponsors on this podcast. We want to keep it content focused and just deliver the best we can to you. So if you think this podcast is worth listening to, can you do me a favor and share it with one friend? I don't care how you share it. You can text it to a friend, Instagram, DM, email, or even snail mail, but I can't reimburse you for that stamp. Look, the best way for a podcast to continue to grow is word of mouth. So if you can share this episode with at least one person, I would be forever grateful. All right, back to the show. All right, so getting into the topic today, we have varied versus random. This is something that comes up quite a bit. It comes up with beginners who don't really know the line of how much variation should I have? At what point does that become ineffective? Also, aside from like knowing or not knowing as a beginner, trying not to fall for some of the marketing ploys out there of like fake science-based programs, I guess is the best way I could like put it. Like, I feel like we're actually science-based because we look at like a lot of different research and literature, and then we kind of slowly make adjustments. There's never like a knee-jerk reaction. And so, like, if someone's like, yeah, what is it? P90X did this, right? P90X, they're like, muscle confusion. And it's like, well, okay, you made that up. And we don't know if that actually holds anywhere, but people loved it. And I think that's still in a lot of like bro science doctrine. Like, I guarantee you could, if you go into like a Globo gym right now and you ask a guy why he's doing something, he might say muscle confusion, like 50% chance if he's over the age of 35. Like, that's just probably going to happen. So, that's kind of what I talk about is like, me specifically, I talk a lot of, let's say, crap about CrossFit. Like, I'm just not a huge fan of kind of the programming methodology. I feel like they got close, but then they missed the mark, and then they held on to it because they had started one way. I don't know how you do, like, okay, sorry. I was about to get like heated right off the bat. I already brought it up. I'm just like, how do you start a programming methodology and then not be willing to change it after decades? Like, you're like, I got it. This is it. It cannot change, and it will only get better. I don't know how you come up with that level of arrogance. Like, we're willing to change our mind all the time, and we're at this for more than 10 years now, and we'll make changes based off of research and science. So anyway, not to go down a CrossFit rant, but it's really more just like how much should be varied and how much should be random. And so, I kind of wanted to start with that because there was this video. You can actually check it out. Maybe we'll even link to it in the show notes, but I'll never forget. This video came out in 2011, and it was CrossFit HQ interviewing Louie Simmons. And Louie Simmons, he's recently passed away. So mad respect for Louie. Give him a lot of credit. A lot of the training that you are doing or have done at Garage Gym Athlete has come from inspiration to that man alone. But he, maybe ran one of the best gyms in the world, from accolades to world record holders to everything else. Their steroid involvement, non-steroid involvement, however you feel about those things. But he's just, he had an amazing track record. And so CrossFit, when they were newer on the scene, they kind of, they interviewed him because they were like, oh, one of the most successful coaches in the world has basically a random program like us, constantly varied function and movement performed at high intensity. So they went to interview him. And I remember the CrossFit HQ guy just over and over again trying to kind of get Louie Simmons to say, my program's constantly varied. Like, they kept saying like, yeah, it's constantly varied. Like, it makes a lot of sense. Right. And then Louie kept correcting him, and he would say, no, it's constantly rotating, not constantly varied. He's like, constantly varied, we'd never make any progress. Constantly rotating is where we're going to come back. You're going to see some similar things over and over again. It's not just like this variation for perpetuity and like, results come. And that was in 2011. Louie Simmons is correcting this guy, but they were just trying to get Louie Simmons to say what he wanted to. And it just has always stuck in my mind because I do feel the best programs in the world are constantly rotating, not necessarily constantly varied, meaning you'll see the back squat more than once every 6 weeks, or whatever the programming methodology is. And so I guess question for you, Joe, is like, you program strength at Garage Gym Athlete, and I can kind of talk about some of my ideas behind this with the Hard to Kill, where I program, but and just our methodology in general. But how do you draw the line between having a varied program that's going to keep someone engaged? Because this is something we teach in the coaching course. Like, you can't just say 5x5 back squat every Monday for the next 52 weeks. Like, people's brains break. They lose interest. Even if they know that's the most effective thing they can do, they're not going to do it. So you're losing the human element if you don't vary to some degree. But if you go too far, you're getting random to where the people aren't seeing that stimulus enough to where they're never actually going to see results. So how do you draw that line? How do you keep people engaged, but not so varied that it's random and probably ineffective?
Well, it definitely has to be a method to the madness. If you are doing something in a program and, you go into your why, ask why a couple of times, and you can't really answer why besides just like, oh well, I just needed to do some strength, so we're just throwing that in there. Well, like if that's not strung together on some sort of like you're gonna do this consistently, then you're just kind of doing it to do it. But my variation typically, in strength, I typically program somewhat formulaic per wave, but each wave is different. So my variety comes when the wave changes. So we program in 4-week waves, and every 4 weeks is deload. So that means 3 weeks I have a certain kind of theme, or if you will. So the strength will be kind of similar. The supersets might be kind of similar. The conditioning, and then whatever sort of emphasis, whether it's energy system or like if I want to go for power or hypertrophy, then that's going to be part of the theme for that wave. And then I might hit it different ways within that wave. So like I might do 2 different kinds of supersets on 2 different days, and then some sort of circuit on another day with power. And then the next wave, so after that 3 weeks of that, and the next wave, it'll be like, okay, now it's a triset. You do 3 things as a superset, and then we're doing hitting some sort of interval afterwards or something like that. So there's still theme, and there's still like each of the variety comes between the waves, but it's still going to be consistent for a couple of weeks. And that way you're kind of dialed into what the theme is, so that you're not just like remembering, oh, okay, 4 weeks ago we did this kind of superset, this sort of power thing. Okay, I need to kind of adjust to what I'm doing. Instead, you're kind of it's kind of fresh on your mind. Okay, we're doing this now. I know that this sort of intensity is working out. Now I can improve upon that, and then for 3 weeks in a row, and then after that there's a break. Then we're gonna now we're doing another sort of emphasis, another sort of supersets, and that's sort of how it comes. But still, everything kind of all fits together. Whether it's the minor, really, if you will, for each wave, it's still in there, and then I'm still balancing in between, and the variation might come with my balancing exercises to where like, okay, this is kind of new, they haven't done before, and while they might kind of find this as like different, I know that it still serves this purpose because this actually pairs well with this over here. So there's definitely layers of how I do it, and I usually look at my 3 weeks all at once, to where like I'll lay it out and like, okay, well, if this is here, then I need to have this kind of here, and that's sort of where the variation comes. But it's not just like, well, we haven't done this thing in a while, so I'm just going to put it in here arbitrarily because of whatever. It's, I actually want to do front squat here. We haven't done front squat in maybe 6 weeks, but I'm doing front squat because we're also doing loaded carries or weighted carries, and holding front weight in the front rack is still sort of that loaded kid, that almost like a Z lift if you're depending on how you're lifting, and we're still getting some squats in. So yeah, you have to be both big picture and then looking at it individually, for at least how I have looked at strength. But there still needs to be some sort of method, and still knowing why you're doing certain parts of the exercises versus like, oh, I just saw this on Instagram, and I just, I went for a run and saw this other circuit on Instagram, so I'm just going to throw this in there because it looks kind of cool. If you want to have some fun stuff to do outside of your main programming days, that's just the enjoyment of fitness, of doing something extra, but not that shouldn't be how you program.
Yeah, I've actually wondered that. I've seen influencers, or whatever you call them. They're like, they post like the workout, like it's like kind of random. They don't do workout of the day. It's like, try this workout. Do people do that? They like just go like, you know what? I don't have anything to do today. That sounds like a good one. I'm
Totally.
sure they do. That kind of blows my
Yeah.
mind though.
There's even like people that are on a program, they're just like, oh, my buddy sent me this workout today that he did. He said it was killer, so I'm just going to do this instead. Like, well, maybe you should like try and fit. Like, it's cool to have the workouts to do with a friend and like have that bonding,
Yeah.
or camaraderie or whatever. But like, you should still have your priority sessions. And like our workouts, Garage Gym Athletes, only 4 days a week. You can do your 4 days whenever you want, and after that, you can fit in the fun stuff or the partner stuff or the run stuff, whatever it is. But like, it shouldn't just be like, you know what, I'm on this linear progression, but my buddy just said this workout was a killer, so I'm just going to do this instead.
Yeah. Or just send your buddy a link to Garage Gym Athlete, and you guys can compare times on the same track or whatever.
4 times a week.
Yeah. So it's kind of my thoughts on this. If you're following our programming, that's one thing, because I just recently did a video, or we did a YouTube video of kind of like a month concurrent training template. And so that kind of shows you like the variation, but like I'm hitting these different areas every 30 days. So like that's kind of my idea on it from the Hard to Kill track. I'd say if we're going kind of outside of like our programming methodology, there are a couple ways you can look at this. You can just straight up test it. So if you're looking to grow muscle and someone gives you a muscle building program, just do it. Do the same week program every week until it stops working. That might be when you need variation. And people don't like that as much, right? Because it's like, oh, I got to do the same thing. And you know, it's probably gonna take like 8 months to find out that it stopped working when you're, especially for like strength and like muscle building stuff. And then the same with like endurance training, just repeat, do the same intervals every single week until you are not shaving time off of, you know, whatever you're trying to shave time off of, whether that's like a mile or 5 mile or 5K or whatever it is. Just do the same workouts every week. And to be honest, when I start a let's say goal oriented programming like BCT, where I was trying to improve my back squat and decrease my mile time, that's all I did at the start, because I feel like it's almost like it's like peeling the layers off the onion that are like unnecessary through boring repetition, because that's the fastest way to get to the core before you actually need to get to these intricate programming methods that aren't even that intricate. But that's where variation's truly needed. So if you're out there chasing a goal, just do the same boring thing every single week until you are no longer seeing results, and then start making the adjustments. And so that's what I did on BCT, was just like intervals. We're going to do these intervals this many times per week. And then like my squat was going up, my mile time was going down. And then eventually that stopped, like because those can't go like forever. Right. And so I was like, reached the asymptotes, and I was like, okay, well, what needs to change and what do I need to start thinking about? And then we got more intricate, having to wave like intensity, stretching out an aerobic base, and like all these things that I knew we needed to do, but I didn't want to do it at first. I just want to do the simple stuff. Like, let's just crush it. Let's see how much progress we can see in a short amount of time. And then we'll start doing the other stuff. And so that's one thing that you could do, like doing Murph every week for a year. You know, anytime I've done stuff like that, like if you're actually trying hard, you'll continue to see progress every single week, even for up to a year. I mean, it won't be every single week that you're just like decreasing those times, but you will continue to see progress if you kind of mix things up or whatever. So I'd say that's a big one to look out for. But then you might run into what I was talking about at the beginning, the boredom, the human element is what we call it. Like, I just can't do the same program over and over again. And that's where I honestly think programs like Garage Gym Athlete or like some really solid programming come into play. So you don't have to think about those things. Because we've talked about the life cycle of a Garage Gym Athlete who programs for themselves. And it's like basically the same, right? It's always like they kind of do that. They just like repeat. And it's either injury or plateau. So they can program for themselves pretty easily until they are pushing themselves beyond their capabilities volume wise, and they don't know it. Boom, injury, or they're not adding enough volume, not quite getting to what they should be doing. And so they hit a plateau, and then they don't really know what to do from there. And so typically what they do is get bored, take time off, wait for their body to actually get worse. So when they start back up again, it seems like they're seeing results again, but really they're just seeing the same results that they've already seen over and over again. And it's like this repeating cycle over and over and over. And so you have to eventually invest in some programming or learn how to do it yourself from there. And that's the best I can give you. So the line is whether varied versus random. Random is when you're not seeing results anywhere. Like if you're working out to like burn some calories and sweat, that's cool. Like I'm all for it, to be honest, because the world needs a lot more of that than we do. Like, let's be on a structured program that improves your mile time. Like we need a lot more of like, hey, yeah, just move and sweat today. I'd be happy if you went for a walk. Like that's what most of the world needs. But if you're actually trying to get better at anything and you're maybe a little more type A, you want to track things, whatever. That's one thing that you're going to be a huge red flag. It's like, I'm doing a lot of work and I have been for a year and I'm not getting better at anything. That's a huge red flag that your program is too random and you're not getting better at anything. And to be honest, it's a little embarrassing in my opinion. Like personally, I would find it embarrassing if I was like, people knew me as a guy who worked out all the time, and they're like, "Hey, let's go for a run." I'm like, "Well, not actually that good at running." I just that would be like a personal thing. I just think you should be getting better in a lot of different areas, and so those are kind of the lines on when to vary and when it's random is when you're not seeing results anywhere. And maybe you're tracking different metrics. You could do a bunch of random workouts, but you're trying to lower your resting heart rate. Cool. At least you know what you're tracking. Completely random programming might still be able to do things like that, but still, it's only going to be up to a certain point. Like if you're going from no exercise to a bunch of random exercise, you'll reduce your resting heart rate. You will be healthier. But then if you want to reduce it again, that next level to Joe level, you're going to have to do a lot of aerobic work, like a lot of aerobic work to get down to 30 beats per minute or whatever it is. So yeah, those are kind of my thoughts. Any thoughts on my thoughts, Joe, or anything you want to come back on?
I think I need to get my heart rate down to Joe level again. I don't know if it is.
I think having a kid might like automatically add 10 beats per minute just resting. But
yeah, I don't think I've made that deep enough sleep to just go into my 30, 33, 34 range again. Yeah, when it comes to programming, it's easy to get caught up on either chasing the shiny thing or the variety or just like adding things because it seems like it's a good idea. But at the core, do what's going to drive you to your main goal, and then do that until you can't, adding some fun variety, but don't chase variety for variety's sake. Don't just throw stuff in there because you're like, well, this one sounded good and I think it might be fine. Like yeah, that's good to have some for the fun part of it, but when it comes to constantly having variety just for variety's sake, you need to ask like, okay, why are you doing that? Maybe your variety could just be your minor, whatever you want to add in a little bit of. And keeping the movement simple as well, I think will also help paint that picture instead of, don't add in a dumbbell burpee box step up over something just because you think it looks cool and you don't really know why you're doing it, but you're just beat to hell afterwards because you see other people do it and that's just what it is. But if it doesn't actually serve much of a purpose besides it's really tired and fatiguing, like I'm not saying that there's a bad movement, but like don't just throw it in there because like, yeah, this kicked my butt. Cool. It's good to just have, think of the purpose and the why between a lot of what you're doing, and then still have your enjoyment and fun workouts and stuff too. Because I still, I still like doing certain sprints, certain workouts that just it will. I definitely feel it afterwards, and it won't always fit into my week for programming for that week, but I still like to do it, and that's kind of the difference there.
Yeah, and we program in that kind of like random, let's call it fun or hard or challenging, kick your butt workout. That's what the Meet Yourself Saturday is for. And I take like zero consideration into what the previous week's programming is in the Meet Yourself Saturday. Like, and if that surprises anyone, it really shouldn't, because that's what Meet Yourself Saturday is all about. Like we could do 500 back squats on a Friday in the Hard to Kill track, and I'll happily program Stairway to Heaven with 1,600 box step ups in it that on the next day. And I don't really care. I might just be like, when I look at the programming, I'm like, oof, that's going to suck a little bit. But that is kind of part of that resiliency. Like, who cares what you did yesterday? You need to be able to perform, because if you actually want to be a human being that's capable of performance in any given situation, you can't really have this excuse of like, oh, well, I did some bicep curls yesterday. I don't know if I can lift those grocery bags today. Like, you can't say shit like that. You just have to be ready to go, And so that's why I like the Meet Yourself Saturday aspect to our program, because it's just like, who cares what you did yesterday? Do it sore, do it anyway. And you get to meet yourself in that process, and just makes it a little bit better. So speaking of.
Yes, that was well done as always.
Yeah, I planned it.
All right. So this one is Quarter Mile for Humanity, and this is definitely one that if your legs are sore, I mean, it's just going to be uncomfortable because there's a lot of lunges.
Anyway.
Anytime there's a lot of lunges, it happens. So with the barbell in the front rack, perform 10 total lunges, 5 each leg. Then stop, stand in place, and do 5 reps of the push press. You will continue until you have completed 400 meters or a quarter mile distance. If you don't have a quarter mile distance, you can't do it, then do 60 rounds. So that means you're 60 times you are doing 5 lunges each leg and 5 push press. It's funny. This is definitely a movement that I don't know how it started, but I heard of this movement on what was it, 2012 on one of my deployments. I was just looking up stuff, and it's something they were doing at SEAL Fit, and I would just looking at workouts for SEAL Fit, and they called them like Curtis P's or P Curtis or something like that, and they're brutal. Because I would throw them in. This would be like end
What is
of
it? A
week.
squat, a lunge to a thruster?
No. It was the same thing. Lunges to push press,
Oh,
or I
got
think
it. Okay.
it was lunges. Yeah, I think it was hang clean. I think they threw in a hang clean in there or something like that. I remember doing hang cleans as well. But yeah, it's pretty brutal. Like doing like 75 pounds or whatever, 95 pounds, something pretty light, and then being smoked afterward. Your shoulders are pretty dang smoked after this too, even with um the lunges. So yeah, this no matter how you break this up, it's going to meet yourself. So try and the weight will be you know don't go too heavy on the weight. I don't know how many times I don't remember what my past um advice has been, but don't go too heavy on the weight because this is going to be a long time, and you're going to want to try and string together as many weights as many sets as possible versus just like you don't want to just do one and then set it down and have to rest and shake it out. So keep that in mind as you're doing this. I think the limiting factor will probably be the push press, um, especially because you're going to be holding it in the front rack as you're going through. So definitely will be testing your shoulders a lot. And hopefully you can do a quarter mile somewhere. Maybe don't take up the inside lane of a track, but you do you.
No, be that person. What,
Yeah.
barbell 7 feet? You go ahead and take up 2 lanes. 2 lanes and maybe a little bit of the third. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't have actually a lot of tips because this one does just kind of suck. You need to maintain good form, try to keep the elbows up and, shoulder blades back, those kind of things. Like this is one where you can get pretty sloppy pretty fast, just both with the lunges and being in the front rack and then also the push press in general. So don't get sloppy, don't get lazy. Maintain the good form. That's part of what makes it hurt a little bit more, makes it meet yourself for this one. Yeah, I would say where you do this can really have a big, I would prefer to do it like in the middle of a football field, and that's a real
Turf,
possibility.
yeah.
Um, just because it's easier to lunge on and stuff. So that's another thing I was just going to mention was, location, like knee sleeves or pads or whatever. It's a real thing. It's a real thing for me out here because if I'm do like any kind of lunges, my driveway is kind of crappy. So are the roads around here. Like, it's not easy to like stay in grass either. So like I put on knee sleeves when I'm doing any kind of like a lot of lunges or anything. So just something else to keep in mind. I don't feel like mental toughness is getting rocks dug into your, soft part of your knee and expecting you to just grit it out. If you want to add that to your mental toughness training, you absolutely can. Just maybe not every day if you're going to bleed. But yeah, that's about it. That's about all I have for this one. Maintain some good form and watch your knees when you're doing the lunges.
Now I know a lot of these weighted carries, it's like specifically supposed to be metal, the barbell thing, but thoughts on sandbag for this?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess
Sandbag
it
would be
might
harder to
not be
push press.
stipulated. Yeah, it'd be a lot easier to carry in the front rack because you could just kind of like,
Hug it.
yeah, put it there. It'd be more comfortable in that regard. But then, yeah, it'd be much more annoying. Because what I found with a sandbag, when you start push pressing or pressing overhead, it's very lopsided. It's like your left arm's getting way more of the weight of your right arm, and you kind of have to adjust. That's the whole point of
You're like
sandbag training. But
70% power that you can like transfer.
yeah, so yeah, I'm fine with someone using a sandbag. This one isn't as much about like the EO3 Iron Mile. Like it's not that has kind of more of a purpose of discomfort. The absolute worst version of this would be a kettlebells, like double kettlebells. That would be awful, depending on the weight selection. But yeah, I got nothing else.
Because even just doing the empty barbell would be rough. So, 20-pound kettlebells would still be pretty terrible.
Yeah, because there's something about I've done a lot of double kettlebell lunges just over the years. They're just always so bad. Like they get you. I don't actually have two matching kettlebells anymore. I did for a while. My friend loaned me a kettlebell and I kept it for like 2 years. And so I had double kettlebells, 1.5 pood, and I did a lot of double kettlebell stuff in those. If only I could get another kettlebell, but no, no,
Unnecessary.
it's too hard. It's too much.
Yeah,
I
right.
reserve all my kettlebells for getting shipped to my relatives' houses when I go visit them. All right. Well, I think we can get out of here. Nice to meet yourself Saturday. So really, we're throwing a lot more into the podcast. I'm sure you guys can tell to some degree. We got a couple more requests out there for reviewing the show, sharing the show, and I think I just want to kind of talk about that for like a brief second, because I feel like the only true people who make it to the end of the podcast are our true believers, true fans. People are really interested. So just more thinking about the podcast recently. We're full-time like programmers, and that's what we've been all about. And the podcast is pretty sizable, pretty large, like from like a downloads perspective, being able to compare that to other podcasts and like sponsorship thresholds and all this stuff. But we're still not doing that. We're still not going to take on sponsors, even though we could, and we do actually turn people away all the time. But we want to, continue to grow the show, the platform, the user base, the community, like everything. We want to keep that going. We're still a business, and so we have those requests out there, not to selfishly help us, because we know that what we provide, even though it's a paid service, is still impactful on human beings and can help. And we have mounds of interviews that say that, an amazing community that proves that. And so you're going to see a little bit more of that. And we'd really appreciate it if you guys took action on any of those things, whether you're on the YouTube channel, you're leaving us a comment, leaving us a review, liking it, subscribing, on the podcast itself, sharing it with a friend. I mean, really, that's a big one. Like, I sat down, I thought of strategies. I've talked to people. Joe and I have had conversations, and it's like, you know what? I don't care about any of the like tactical level stuff. Like, I think the most important thing that we can do, or like, let's just say the tricky, whatever crap like that, I just, we're not interested in, is more like, just share it with somebody. Can you please share it with one other human being? That's one of our asks, because I think word of mouth is like 10 times more important than anything else that we could do, like whether it's advertising or anything else. Like if you legitimately love what we do from a programming standpoint, you like what we do, podcasting content wise, you think it's helpful, useful. I mean, just share it with one other person. I mean, it can even be a private share. Like, I'm not trying to get you to be like, yeah, like, make sure you, share it 50 times and whatever. Like, I know, just like email it. Seriously, email it to your dad, your brother, your, whoever, your cousin, like somebody who you might find it beneficial and they might be interested in it. Be like, hey, can you check this out? I really like these guys or whatever. I think that's the biggest thing that we can do. I don't think that it's some like crazy growth strategy, to be honest, but I do think it's the best strategy for us to help more people in a genuine way. Because having 10,000 people sign up for a free trial, but nobody actually doing the work, is not very advantageous to us, and really just would kind of like break customer service and also not get anybody results, which is like a huge like lose-lose. But if we had every person bring one person, and that person's a little bit more bought in because they know you're seeing results, we'd love to help them and get them just indoctrinated into the content first. Like, don't even worry about the 14-day free trial or signing up for the programming or any of that might be a little bit more intimidating for people. Just involved in the content. It's free. We don't have sponsors, and we want to keep it that way. And, we plan to. So that's it. That's all I'll say there. If you are part of the community, I mean, I really appreciate everything that you guys do for the community, keeping it going in the Facebook group, the interaction we get to have with you on social, email, everything else. Like, we really appreciate that. And then if there is anybody who made it to the end of the podcast who's not in the programming, you think you're not ready, or maybe you kind of got off the programming, maybe it's time to get back on. Go to garagedymathlete.com, sign up for a 14-day free trial. And honestly, we'd love to have you. I think it'd be awesome to get as many people involved in this as we can because the community is so awesome. So that's it for this one, guys. And just remember, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you. Athlete Podcast. If you want to learn more, go to GarageGymAthlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Thanks for listening.